The room smelled of smoke, sweat, and metal. Dim lights flickered above, and the walls were made of black stone and rusted steel. It was not a place of kindness. It was the slave market on Zarnik 9, a forgotten planet ruled by cruel traders. Behind a thin red curtain stood a girl, barely a woman, barely alive. Her skin was pale with bruises. Her eyes looked down. She wore almost nothing, just what the traders forced her to wear. A small metal tag hung from her neck. Personal model number 4467. She did not remember her real name. Maybe she never had. People walked past her, laughing, pointing. Rich aliens in robes, drunk warlords, and silent buyers, none of them saw her as a person. Just something to own, to use, to throw away when bored. She had been here many times before. Sold and returned. Abused and broken. She didn't cry anymore. What was the point? And then he walked in. A human. He wore old boots and a dusty coat. His face was tired, eyes sharp. No one in the room paid much attention to him. Humans were weak, poor, and not welcome in most parts of the galaxy. But he didn't look around like the others. He didn't smile at the slaves. He walked straight to the curtain. The trader nearby laughed. That one, she's used. Damaged. Goods by another friend. The human said nothing. He gently pulled the curtain aside. She looked up, just a little, afraid. He didn't stare at her body like the others. He looked at her face, her eyes, her fear, and then he asked one question. How much? The trader grinned. You can have her for cheap. She's useless. Won't even speak anymore. The human reached into his coat and pulled out a bag of credits. More than enough. Probably all he had. The trader looked surprised, but quickly took. The money, your loss, human. Enjoy your toy. The human didn't respond. He held out his hand to the girl. She flinched. I won't hurt you, he said softly. You're free now. She didn't believe him. Of course not. No one ever meant those words. But her feet moved, slowly, weakly. She stepped out of the curtain like a ghost escaping a cage. The room fell silent. No one had ever seen that slave step out. The human led her outside. Cold air touched her skin. For the first time in years, she felt wind. Stars above. Real stars. He opened the door to his small ship and helped her in. She sat in the corner, hugging her knees, shaking. He gave her a blanket, then water, then food. Still, she didn't speak. Not a word. He sat on the floor across from her, leaning back. My name's Ray, he said. I'm not rich, not special. But I couldn't leave you there. She stared at him, confused. Sleep. You'll be safe, he added, closing his eyes. She didn't sleep. She watched him the whole night, waiting for him to change, waiting for the monster to show. But it never came. The next morning, she woke to the smell of warm bread. Her body was still sore, but she wasn't chained. The door wasn't locked. Ray handed her a piece of bread and said, You don't have to talk yet. Just eat. We'll figure this out. Tears rolled down her cheeks, even though she didn't understand why. This wasn't how humans were supposed to act. Not in her world, not in her life. The stars outside the small ship glowed softly as it floated in orbit around a quiet moon. Inside, the silence was heavy, broken only by the quiet hum of the engines and the occasional soft clink of metal tools. The girl sat in the corner of the ship, wrapped in a blanket too big for her small frame. Her legs were folded tightly beneath her, and her hands clutched the edge of the blanket as if letting go would mean falling back into the nightmare she had just escaped. Her eyes didn't move from the man sitting across the room, Ray. The human. He had not touched her since they entered the ship. He hadn't asked for anything. He hadn't even looked at her with hunger or cruelty. That made her more afraid than anything else because she didn't understand it. She had seen kind faces before they turned dark. Before they whispered lies. Before the hurting began. So what made this one different? Ray was on the floor, his coat hung up, and a small toolkit spread out in front of him. He wasn't fixing the ship. He was working on something small. Broken music box, perhaps? Tiny wires, gentle lights. His hands moved slowly, calmly. He didn't speak much. Just offered her food again. She hadn't touched it. She still thought it might be drugged. Or maybe he was waiting for her to break. To beg. To crawl. That's what they always wanted. But this man didn't seem to want anything at all. That night, when she lay curled on the floor, her eyes stayed open. She had no name to whisper, no prayers to say, only memories. Painful, sharp ones. Hands grabbing her, voices laughing. Cold floors, screams behind curtains, and now warmth. She didn't trust it. Ray, still awake, looked over and spoke gently. "You don't have to be afraid here," he said. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. He didn't push. Just turned off the overhead light and lay down nearby, not too close, but near enough to protect. "Good night," he said. She had never heard that word said to her before. The next morning, Ray was already awake. The ship was quiet, docked now near a green forest planet. He made breakfast again, soft, warm flatbread with something sweet spread on top. The smell filled the small space. He placed the plate gently near her and walked away to sit by the ship's controls. She stared at the food for a long time. Then, slowly, she reached for it. Her fingers shook. The first bite was small, then another. The taste. It was nothing like the stale protein bricks she had eaten in the cages. This was soft, made by hands, not machines. And it was made for her, not forced into her mouth. When Ray turned around and saw her eating, T smiled just a little. Not the smile of victory or pride, just quiet peace. After she finished, she finally spoke her first words in days. "What do you want from me?" She whispered, her voice rough. Ray looked confused at first. Then he gently shook his head. "Nothing." He said, "I don't want anything." "Why did you buy me?" she asked, still holding the blanket close. His eyes didn't look away. "Because you were hurting, and no one else cared." "That's not a reason." "Maybe not for others," he replied. "But it's enough for me." She didn't understand that the concept of someone helping without gain was foreign to her. It didn't fit into the world she had lived in, but she stayed quiet. That evening, Ray handed her a small pouch. Inside were clothes, simple but soft. "Clean. You can change in there," he said. Pointing to the small bathroom, she looked down at her body, bruised, dirty. Still wearing the slave's fabric, she nodded slowly and went inside. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. The girl who looked back at her didn't look like a person. Her hair was tangled, her eyes too hollow. But for the first time, she had the chance to be more. She changed into the new clothes, hands shaking the whole time. When she came out, Ray looked up and smiled. A kind smile. "You look human," he said gently. Her eyes watered, and she didn't know why. She looked away quickly. He didn't push further. "Tomorrow," he said, "we'll go somewhere safe. A place where no one will ever claim you again." "Where is that?" she asked. "Wherever you choose it to be." She didn't sleep much that night either, but for the first time in years, she wanted to. Because something inside her whispered that maybe this was not a trap. Maybe this was the beginning of something real. The stars outside were gone now, hidden behind the thick blue clouds of the new planet below. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that felt safe. She sat near the window of the ship, watching the birds fly past as Ray finished adjusting the landing gear, Her hands were folded on her lap, her hair freshly washed, tied back with a ribbon he had offered. She didn't know why he gave her these small things, but every one of them made her feel noticed, not owned, not used, just seen. Ray walked back into the room, wiping grease from his fingers. "We'll be safe here," he said, pointing to a small settlement on the scanner screen. "There's no slave registry on this world. No one will come looking." She nodded, though she didn't fully understand why he was still helping her. He sat beside her, but not too close. He was careful like that, always giving space, always asking nothing. After a moment, he said, "I've been thinking." She looked at him, unsure. "You need a name," he continued, smiling gently. "Something real, something that belongs to you. Not a tag, not a number." She lowered her head. He reached into a small drawer and pulled out an old, worn book. The cover was faded, written in Earth's old language. He flipped through the pages, pointing to one of the names. "Zara," he said softly. "It means seed. A beginning, new life." She blinked. "Zara, it's your choice. You can say no, or pick something else, or nothing at all." She repeated the name inside her mind. Zara. It sounded warm, alive. She had never had something of her own, not even a voice. "I'd like it," she whispered. Ray smiled wider now. "Then it's yours." Zara, that night, while Ray slept on the floor again, choosing discomfort so she could have the bed, she whispered the name into the darkness. "Zara." She said to herself, "My name is Zara." And then she cried. But these tears were different. They weren't from fear. They were from something she couldn't name. Something soft and aching. Something new. The next morning, Ray showed her how to use the kitchen panel. The buttons confused her at first, but he was patient. He didn't laugh when she burned the first bread. He just helped her try again. "I've never cooked," she admitted, biting her lip. "Well," Ray chuckled, "neither have I. We'll learn together." She didn't know why that made her smile. Later, she followed him outside the ship, into the fresh air. The grass felt strange, under her bare feet. Real, not like the cold floors of the cells. A small animal ran past, its fluffy tail swaying. Zara froze. Ray chuckled again. "It's just a glimmer fox. They're harmless. Fast though, like you, maybe." "Not me," she said. "I'm not fast. I'm broken." Ray's face became serious. "No, you're not." She looked away. "You?" "Survived," he continued. "You're still here?" That's strength, Zara. She had never been called strong before. She wasn't sure if she believed him, but the way he said her name, like it mattered, made her want to believe. In the days that followed, Ray let her help repair small things on the ship. He showed her how wires connected, how to solder circuits. She watched his hands, steady and kind. Each time she got something right, he nodded with pride. Not like a master, like a partner. One evening, she made dinner. It wasn't perfect too. Much salt, but Ray ate all of it without a single complaint. "Best meal I've had in years," he said with a grin. She blushed. "You don't have to lie. I'm not." Zara didn't know what to say, so she just nodded and looked down, hiding a small smile. That night, while cleaning up the dishes, her hand brushed against his by accident. She froze. Ray didn't move. He didn't pull away. He just looked at her gently. "You're okay," he said softly. Zara's heart raced. Her body tensed, but there was no pain, no command, no anger. Just warmth. She looked at him, really looked, and whispered, "Why? Are you like this?" Ray shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe because I've seen too much wrong in the galaxy. And I promised myself, if I had the chance to do one thing right, I would." Her eyes filled again. "But I'm not worth that," she said. Double quotes, "Yes, you are." And in that moment, something changed inside her. Not all at once, but a crack formed. In the wall she had built around her soul, a small light entered, and her name was Zira. Zira had touched many hands before. Rough hands. Greedy hands. Hands that didn't ask. Hands that took. But this time was different. This hand wasn't reaching to take anything from her. It was just... There Ray had been fixing a power wire behind the ship's cargo bay. Sparks had blown out. A few connectors, and he needed help holding a small light. Zara offered silently, without him asking. She stood close, holding the light steady, watching him work. He was careful, focused. His hands moved with patience, never rushing. Not once did he raise his voice, even when the tool slipped or the wire sparked. Then, as he reached to grab the light, his fingers accidentally brushed hers. It was only a second, but Zara froze. Her whole body went stiff. The memory of pain flashed, in her mind like a warning. But nothing happened. No orders. No cruel laugh. No command to strip. No fists. Just a warm, gentle touch. She blinked, eyes wide. Ray noticed. He immediately stepped back. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "Didn't mean to." She shook her head quickly, holding up a hand. "No, it's okay," she whispered. Ray looked at her, really looked. "You don't have to be afraid of me." Zara's lips trembled. "I know," she said, "but sometimes my body still remembers." He nodded slowly. "That makes sense." There was silence between them, but it wasn't heavy. It felt honest. She looked down at her hand. The one he touched, it didn't burn. It didn't shake. It felt alive. That evening, Zira sat on the front steps of the small home Ray had built on the edge of the forest. The stars above the trees blinked peacefully, like watching eyes that didn't judge her. She was holding a small cup of warm tea Ray had made. It was her favorite part of the day now, the warmth in her hands, the quiet wind in the trees, and the smell of real air, not metal or sweat. Ray joined her after a while. Sitting a few feet away, "I fixed the scanner panel," he said, sipping his own tea. "Now we can see ships up to 10 miles away." Zara nodded. "That's good. Means no surprise visits," he added. She looked at him. "Are you still worried? They'll come back for me." Ray paused before answering. "Always ready, but I'm not scared." "Why?" "Because you're not alone anymore." Zara looked away. Her eyes stung with emotion. No one had ever said that to her before. Later that night, she couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but from something else. A question. One that wouldn't stop turning in her head. Why was he doing this? Why her? She walked to the small workbench where Ray kept his tools. Kay was sitting there, humming quietly while building a small music player. He looked up, surprised. "Can't sleep?" Zara shook her head. Then she asked, "Why did you save me?" Ray leaned back in his chair, thinking. "I don't know the perfect answer," he said. "But when I saw you standing there behind that curtain, something in me just broke." She frowned. Broke. "I saw a living being, treated like trash. And I thought, what if someone had done that to my sister, my mother, to someone I loved?" Zara's breath caught. "You didn't even know me," she whispered. "Maybe I didn't have to." He said. There was silence again. Then, slowly, very slowly, she walked closer. She reached out, her hand, small and soft, touched his, not by accident this time. On purpose. Ray froze, looking up at her. "Zara." Her voice was quiet, but steady. "I wanted to see if I could do it without shaking." He turned his hand gently, holding hers. "You did it." And she did not pull away. The next morning, Zira felt different. The world looked clearer. Her steps were lighter. Something inside her had changed. She was still healing, still learning, still afraid. Sometimes, but now, there was something else. Something stronger. She felt human. Maybe not by blood, but by choice, by heart, by the warmth of a hand that asked nothing in return. The wind was still that morning. Birds didn't sing. The air felt too quiet. Zara was watering the small garden behind Ray's house, kneeling in the dirt, her hands muddy, but smiling. Oh, she had learned to love this routine, caring for something. That grew. It made her feel alive. Ray was inside, fixing the ship's long-range beacon. Everything felt peaceful until the alert sounded. Beep, 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 beep. Zara dropped the water can. Her breath caught. Ray ran outside, wiping his hands. Up at the sky, a dark ship hovered in the distance. Cold, silent. Military design, Zara's body froze. She knew that shape. Those colors. That mark on the side. Slave retrieval unit. Her knees went weak. She grabbed the edge of the garden fence to keep herself upright. Her skin turned cold, her heart pounding in her chest. Ray moved quickly. Inside. Now, she obeyed without thinking. Her mind raced with fear. "They found me," she whispered. Shaking, Ray locked the doors and pulled up the defense shield. He grabbed his old plasma rifle from a secret wall panel. Zara watched in horror. "You can't fight them. They'll kill you." "I'm not letting them take you," he said firmly. "You don't understand," she cried. "I'm property. To them, they have rights paperwork." Ray turned to her, face hard. "You're not property. Not to me. Never again." The ship landed just outside. Dust blew across the garden. 2 armored aliens stepped out, one tall and gray, the other short with glowing red eyes. They carried stun staffs and tracking devices. Ray opened the door and stepped outside. He raised his hands slowly. "We don't want trouble," he said. The taller alien pointed. "That female inside. She belongs to Sector Syndicate 7. Return her or face punishment." "She's my wife," Ray said boldly. Zara, listening from the doorway, gasped. The aliens paused. The red-eyed one hissed. "We see no bondmate registration in the system." Ray stood firm. "We're off-grid, remote colony marriage. It's legal under Article 19F of Interstellar Refugee Rights." The aliens growled, clearly annoyed. "Proof?" Ray reached into his coat and pulled out a small device. A forged but flawless registry chip blinked softly. "I registered it yesterday," he lied smoothly. Under colony law, they scanned it. The chip pulsed green. Zara stood frozen. He had done all this behind her back to protect her. She wasn't just a rescued slave anymore to them. She was now a wife. A pause filled the air. Then the red-eyed alien turned and spoke in their own tongue. After a moment, they stepped back. "This will be reviewed," the tall one said. "If the claim is false, the penalty is death." Ray nodded calmly. "Then double-check your database." Without another word, the aliens returned to their ship. It lifted into the sky and vanished behind the clouds. Zara ran outside, tears in her eyes. "Why did you say that? Why did you risk?" Ray gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "Because I meant it," he said. "If that's what it takes to keep you free, then yes, Zara, I'd marry you." She looked at him, stunned, not because of the lie, but because, deep down, she didn't want it to be a lie anymore. That night, neither of them said much. Zara sat on the porch, watching the stars again. Her fingers played with the edge of her sleeve, heart beating fast. Ray joined her quietly. She turned to him. Ray. He looked at her. I don't know if I understand marriage, or love, or if I even deserve something like that. Ray didn't interrupt. But I do know, she continued, voice shaking, that I want to stay here. With you. Not because I have to, but because I want to. He smiled, and that was enough. The threat was not over. The galaxy was still dangerous. But something had changed. Zara wasn't running anymore. She was standing beside someone who would fight for her, lie for her, and protect her, not because he had to, but because he chose to, and for the first time in her life, someone chose her. Not as a slave, not as a reward, but as a person, maybe, even as a wife. The wind blew gently across the green hills behind Ray's home. The flowers Zara planted last week had begun to bloom, teeny purple buds fighting through the soil. Just like her, but inside the house, the air was tense. Zara sat at the edge of the bed, fingers tightly holding a small white ring box Ray had left on the table that morning. She hadn't opened it yet. He hadn't asked her to. He hadn't said anything at all since the slave retrieval unit left 3 days ago. Ray was outside, cutting wood and working quietly. He acted normal, but Zara could feel the change in him, like he was waiting for her. For a decision, because the truth was now sitting between them like a silent question. Was the marriage just a lie to protect her? Or was it something real? Zara had never thought about love before. Not like this. Love to her used to mean control, submission, obedience. That's what the masters had called it. But Ray never asked for any of those things. He gave her time. He gave her space, and now he had given her a choice. The ring box was plain. No jewels. No glow. Just a small silver circle inside, simple and strong. Like him, she opened it slowly and stared at the ring. Her chest felt heavy. She didn't know what kind of woman she was. She didn't know if she was ready to be someone's wife. But she knew. One thing for sure, Ray had already given her more than anyone ever had. A home, safety, a name, a future. And he never once asked her to give anything in return. Ray was stacking wood when she came outside. She was barefoot, wearing a long white shirt and simple pants. Her hair was tied back in a way she had started doing herself lately, not because someone told her to, because she wanted to. He looked up. Their eyes met. I found the box, she said. He nodded, wiping his hands. I wasn't sure when to give it to you. Zara stepped closer. You already gave it to me, Ray. Without a word, he didn't speak. He didn't want to rush her. She held the box out, open. I don't understand everything yet, she said. I don't know how to be a wife. I still wake up scared sometimes. I still feel like I'm not enough. Ray's eyes softened. But, she continued, voice growing steadier, when you held my hand. When you stood in front of those soldiers, when you said I was your wife, even though it was a lie, I wanted it to be true. He stepped closer. I don't care what you were, he said quietly. All I see is what you are now. You're kind, you're strong. You're learning, you're Zara. She blinked fast, tears forming in her eyes. I want to be your wife. She whispered. Ray gently took the ring, sliding it onto her finger. It was a little loose, but it didn't matter. It fit. Not because it was perfect, but because it was chosen. That evening, they sat on the steps of their home. Side by side, Zara leaned her head against Ray's shoulder for the first time. He didn't flinch. He didn't stiffen. He just rested his head gently against hers. It wasn't passion. It wasn't fire. It was something far deeper, peace. They watched the stars rise together. Zara whispered, Do you think they'll come again? Ray nodded slowly. Maybe. Then? What do we do? He smiled. Then we fight. As husband and wife. She smiled too. It felt strange to say those words out loud. Wife, husband, but it also felt right. The next morning, Zira cooked breakfast. The eggs were a little burnt, but Ray didn't say a word, just ate every bite. "You'll be a pro in no time," he joked. "I'll try," she smiled. After breakfast, Ray handed her a data pad. "What's this?" "Something I thought you might want to do," he said. "It's a course: basic reading, writing, and mechanics. You don't have to, but if you want." Zara stared at it. No one had ever asked what she wanted before, and now this man, her husband, was giving her choices she never thought she could have. "I want to learn," she said. Ray nodded. "Then we start today." And so they did. That day, and every day after, they built something together. They built something together, not just a home, but a life. Not one based on control, but on healing and choice and love. The stars above seemed brighter now. Zara stood near the garden, wiping her hands on a cloth after planting new seeds. Her hair was longer, her skin healthier, her eyes no longer empty. It had been 3 months since the ring touched her finger. 3 months since she stopped being property. She now walked taller, spoke clearer, smiled more often. She still had bad days, dreams she couldn't control. Moments of fear when a loud noise made her flinch, but now, she was not alone. Ray was always there, not as her rescuer anymore, but as her partner. That word meant something now. One morning, while organizing tools in the shed, Zara found an old communicator device. It was covered in dust and wires, forgotten under a pile of scrap. She turned it over in her hands and called out, "Ray?" Ray walked over, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Old distress beacon. It still works, but I never use it." Zira tilted her head. "Could it reach others?" "Probably," he said. "Why?" She held the device tighter. "There are still girls out there like me, right?" Ray nodded, his face growing serious. "Too many." She looked at him, eyes firm. "Then maybe it's time we stopped hiding." Studied her, not as a fragile thing, but as a woman who had found her strength. "You want to help them?" he asked. Zara nodded. "If we can, even one." He smiled. "Then we will." They spent weeks building the signal. Zara helped connect the power nodes. She learned how to boost the range, how to protect the signal with a rotating encryption code. Together, they sent out a message to the stars. If you're trapped, afraid, or forgotten, there's a place for you. Come home. No coordinates, no names. Just hope, and that was enough. It started with one. A girl barely older than Zara had been, limping into their clearing with a torn dress and blood on her face. She didn't speak. She didn't trust, but Zara didn't ask anything from her. She just handed her a blanket, a meal, a name. Then came another and another. They built more rooms onto the house. Ray expanded the water system. Zara taught the new girls how to cook, clean, and hold a tool. How to speak their names again. She showed them the garden, the sky, the stars. And one day, one of the girls asked her, "Were you ever like us?" Zara looked at her. She smiled. "Yes," she said softly. "Hey, but not anymore." Ray and Zara stood outside, watching the sun go down. The sky burned orange and gold, and behind them, laughter echoed from the house, real laughter. "You started something." "You know," Ray said, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. Zira leaned into him. "We started something." Ray nodded. "You turned a prison into a home. I had help. You had heart." She laughed quietly. "Do you remember the day I touched your hand?" He grinned. "You were so scared. And now look at me." She smiled, raising her hand, the silver ring still shining on her finger. "You've come a long way," he whispered. Zira turned to face him. "No," she said. "We came a long way." That night, while the others slept, Zara wrote her story on a small tablet. She called it From Property to Partner. Not to forget her past, but to honor the journey. She saved the file, closed the screen, and finally, for the first time in her life, she slept without fear.